Coaches, today before we get started, I want to thank our sponsor, CoachPad. No matter if you draw scout cards by hand or use a program on your computer, CoachPad will give you back time by never stuffing a binder again before heading out to practice. First 13.3-inch electronic device allowing coaches to clearly display scout cards outdoors in the sun has been a game changer for programs this past fall and those currently planning all across the country. This new technology allows coaches to coach and not the monotonous task of stuffing and dealing with binders on the practice field. Check out the CoachPad and CoachPad Mini on thecoachpad.com. Please make sure you check out our sponsors, our affiliates, and here is another episode of the Gap Down Backer podcast. Welcome back to another episode of the Gap Down Backer podcast. Today we have a great guest, a young upcoming coach. He's the offensive coordinator at Wilmington College, Coach Hayden Thomas. Coach, how are you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing good, Coach. I mean, it's a good chat with you before we started.
Yeah.
I appreciate you coming on. I mean, we've been playing tag, and like I said, I usually say pretty good things about the university because they recruit our school pretty hard. But how do you end up becoming the offensive coordinator at Wilmington? Because I mean, you've pretty much kind of climbed up the ladder there. What was that kind of progression from where you started to kind of where you are?
Yeah, when I first got how I got here was the previous head coach. I played for him in college at Bluffton University, and kind of going into my second semester, my senior year, he took this job and ended up recruiting me to coach with him, and have me get down here on campus and see everything that's here, and the access to recruits, and the being an hour away from the three major cities in Ohio, and the facilities and the things that are here, and playing in the Ohio Athletic Conference against the best of the best was a big piece of it too. But my second semester, my senior year, I was really traveling down here to help out as much as I could, usually Wednesday through Sunday, then driving back to Bluffton and finishing my classes, and officially started August of 2017, I believe, but started off as our offensive tackle, tight end coach. He just got done playing offensive line in the same system. So I was able to work with those guys as well as work with a tight end position group. And then really from there, I ended up taking over the tailbacks the next season. And after one season with the tailbacks, I ended up taking over the quarterbacks for 2 years, which was probably one of the best decisions I ever made, or an opportunity that I got, was to take over the quarterbacks, and was able to do that for 2 years, and then really took this thing over offensive wise and system wise. That fall of 2020, I believe, was the first year, the spring of 2020. So, yeah.
Now let's kind of talk about that, because I mean, one of the things we talked about was being a young coordinator. I mean, you're in your mid-20s, being a Division III offensive coordinator, and you take over a COVID year, which is not easy by any means. I mean, and then you have really zero time to go from, okay, I just coordinated a COVID year, to prep for the fall. Like, whereas a normal coordinator after the first year, okay, they can assess, look at film, reassess, get a full recruiting class, and all that lovely stuff. And you really didn't. I mean, you're done in April, and you got 2.5 months till camp starts again, and like there's no time. Do you want to kind of talk about that transition and what it's like to be a young Division III offense coordinator?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I was when I got promoted to offensive coordinator, it was like the January, right before all the COVID stuff happened. I actually went on spring break out to the West Coast, and was able to do some clinicking out there with Coach Harrell when he was at USC and at San Diego State, obviously. And I got back, and we were the whole country got shut down. So it was kind of a blessing in a sense that I was able to spend a lot of time kind of processing all the information and stuff that I had been working on. I was able to my time in a sense of putting that together, the system together, and how we wanted to do things, and the and really when we got to the fall and our kids got on campus, probably the toughest part was we were really just running around in our underwear in a sense. So there was all the pod stuff and couldn't do anything against defense, and it was great to be able to get stuff in and install, but you never got to see a defense that's pretty critical with the stuff that we do. So that was that was a big piece of it. And I guess kind of the second piece of that, how I got to kind of where I got to, took a lot of pride in being great at like the tasks that no one else wants to do. As a younger coach, whether it was doing the Photoshop stuff or doing the operation stuff, and trying to be great at that, to make sure that I was adding value to the staff, and then being able to coach multiple positions, I think was extremely valuable for me as well. To be able to have a deep understanding of the game on the front end, and then be able to get to the back half of things and seeing secondaries and understand how to manipulate defense, stuff like that, that I think was really valuable once I got to be able to coach quarterbacks. So those are the biggest things, just being just as eager as possible to learn and talk to as many people as I can talk to, and learn the defensive side of the ball. I probably when I go out in clinic or listen to people, I listen to defense stuff more than I listen to offensive stuff. So those are the kind of the big pieces there in that regard.
Now, kind of bouncing, actually continuing off that, bouncing is probably a bad word. Continuing off it, I mean, before we get into kind of creating offense, how much were you allowed to initially retool the offense when you took over? Obviously, there's stuff you're going to keep the same. Every college in America pretty much runs inside zone or a variation of inside tight mid zone. But how much were you able to do that? And do you think, again, yes, you couldn't necessarily go talk to people face to face, but how much did either the small changes you made or the overhaul wholesale changes you made, how much was that benefit from you pretty much having a full calendar year? Because pretty much from January, it was, you didn't have true like football practice.
Yeah. Our kind of big thing, when we first got here, we were running the previous head coach's system, Coach Moore's system that we had run at Bluffton, and as our previous offense coordinator took it over, we started manipulating it a little bit to better fit our personnel, the guys that we had, the quarterback we had, and 3 years down the road, we look at it and it was like we had so much, and there was really no identity to anything. So that's really what the head coach wanted, was we want to have an identity, and however you got to get that done, do it, and said go. So we took it to scratch. We built it from the ground up, which is a wild task in itself. But we reworded everything. We re-signaled everything. We pre-snap operation, everything was completely new for our guys. So that was the process that was tough. The aspect of getting it, installing it without ever seeing it against the defense. We did some install in the spring via Zoom, and then when we got here in the fall, it was still on air. So a lot of that, the thoughts in the back of your mind, like, does this even work? Was a piece of it for sure. So those are some of the tough battles that I had kind of with myself, like, what is this? And I'm a guy that needs to see things. I need to have my hands on. I need to feel it. And that was certainly a tough piece of it.
Now, how much? Actually, I'm gonna rephrase this. When you were building your system, where did you start? Like, I'm always curious about that when somebody builds an offensive system or defensive system from scratch. It's like, where do you start? Like, because I am probably more a defensive coach than offensive coach. I've coordinated both sides. I've been on both sides, all that lovely jazz. But there's always the arguments amongst defense coaches: do you start with fronts or coverages? That's always the argument. But from an offensive perspective, where did you start? Where did you feel like, okay, this is kind of looking at our personnel, looking at our league, looking at what we want to do. This is offensively where you got to start. Was it formations? Was it plays? Was it run plays? Was it pass plays? Where did you kind of find, okay, this is where we got to start and we're going to grow from there?
Players.
Okay.
Our players. Who do we have in house right now? Who do we tend to see that we get the most kind of in recruiting, that our best talent? Where does that come from? And it's been our receivers group for sure. And then secondly, our quarterback has always been kind of our staple here of the types of kids that we get. So that was kind of A1, was looking at our players. But how I went about it was gathering an overload of information from talking to Coach Coral at Mount St. Joseph, from talking to Coach Aklinski at San Diego State, or Coach Harrell, who's at West Virginia now, or Tim Sanders, who was at Anderson, who's at App State now, and then all the clinics and stuff. And I was really able to pull kind of a little bit from everybody of how I wanted to really attack it, how they attack it, and finding those types of things. And I was also lucky enough, when we were in quarantine, I was stuck in the house. I went back home to Perrysburg, and I had my brother who coaches out at New Mexico State, and my youngest brother who's at Bowling Green as a student coach. And so I had two helpers there too that were in house, as well as having a staff on Zoom. That was able to really dive into all that and start, okay, this is even from the stuff that I didn't like from the previous system, or things that I thought our guys struggle with, and finding a way to do things easier. So we started a pre-snap operation, just all the way from our cadence, tempo operations, personnel, formations, adjustments, tags, motions, and started in that world. And how can we get this done the easiest? How can we build tips and tricks into things? When I was younger, I got to listen to Jerry Lucas speak, and he talks about his learning process. He had a whole program that was out on learning process, and that always stuck with me. So I'm a big family association. All of our meshes are going to be in this certain family, and our quick game is going to be in this family, and stuff like that, and trying to build in tips and tricks in those words and families for our guys to be able to process and think quicker. So we do a lot of that, and we still do it of, hey, can we make something shorter, faster, quicker, easier for our guys to remember? So we battled a lot of that stuff probably for a whole month of, we wake up one day and we said, hey, this is what we think is best, and we reevaluate the next morning. Did anyone find anything that could be quicker or easier or more advantageous for us to teach to our guys? So that's where we started. Then from there, the concepts are the concepts. I tell our recruits when they come in and talk, there's no secret offense out there. We're all doing the same stuff. It's the way that you play that is your edge at the end of the day. It's how physically you play, how tough you play, how long can you play. That's how we try to be different.
Now, I'm always curious about this too, is how many times did you just hit delete on a page and just said, or like completely just redid a page and like, I don't like how any of that looks. I'm just going to I'm going to print this off, and then I'm going to just completely redraw everything, including like the word, where the words are, how it's worded. How many times did you just scrap everything and just say, starting over?
Man, the number of trying to find a playbook page that I thought was going to be best was a battle in itself. I'm talking like even like our defensive identification stuff. Like everything that we had done here prior to was really based off like what we called a coverage or a stunt, front, blitz, whatever, was based off of what they called it at Bluffton, and which was the Bluffton's defense's terminology that they used on offense to identify things. And like going out to clinic and stuff, I was like, I wanted to make sure that I wanted to have a identification system that was familiar, that I could be able to talk the same language. If I'm saying a certain coverage or a blitz pattern, I want to be able to speak that when I'm talking to coaches and asking them questions rather than saying, hey, we call this gobbledygook, right? And they're like, what the hell is it? What the heck's that as far as what the pressure is? And then I got to get on the board and draw it when I can just say, hey, this is a fire or this is a pole or a USA, whatever you want to call it. Trying to find the most familiar terminology just in that sense. So we redid. I mean, everything was redone.
Now, at the same time, you did your playbook. How much did that cause you to change, or you as a staff to evaluate your drills within your system? Like, was there a complete overhaul there as well? Were there smaller changes there? But how much did that cause some changes for you guys, individual and group and pod wise?
Yeah, the system probably changed our drill work from what we had done previously. You got to do kind of what we do offensively. You got to do your sit sudden drill. You got to do your ROAs. You got to do some pack and goes. You got to do some stuff that's your bunch of routes on there. Like, you got to do a lot of that stuff that maybe we hadn't done in the past, and we were doing different things. It seems like so long ago when we were doing those different things, but that's probably the drills change based on system rather than anything.
Now, you mentioned also there, and we kind of talked before about tempo. How much, because you mentioned you changed everything from the cadence to you constantly looking, is there a faster, better way to do things? How much, what was the process like of changing your tempo operation? And then are you still tooling with that, or did you find something you like? What was the transition like? What was it like creating a new tempo operation for your system?
Yeah. As a kind of the way that we had done it in the past, and when I played offensive line, and this is kind of where my beef originally had started, was as offensive line, when you're looking to the sideline for signals and things like that, you're notorious for standing up, walking around, you're looking over there for your signaler. You have the most people to kind of look through, or you have to look back so you're not on the ball. So that was kind of where my beef had started. Was, man, we're walking around up front, or we're being lazy, whatever it was, and I really wanted to be able to. I heard I can't remember who it was, but it was a good clinic about tempo, and you have to coach it. So how are we going to coach it? And creating rules that can be seen on film and coached on film. So little things like our offensive line, we should always be chasing the ball, and you can see that on tape during a play. Is your offensive line chasing the ball, and getting your center to get his eyes to the line judge to make sure he can see the yard line that the ball is going to be at, so he can go get his feet set as fast as humanly possible. And our offensive line don't take signals anymore. It's more quarterback communication. But coaching your eligibles who don't have the ball, snap your head to the sideline as that when that play ends. That part, like, you can see that on tape. We can coach that every single day, that we should see a distinct head snap and getting our eyes to the sideline every single time. If you have the football, you should never be giving the football to a side judge. That ball should be back to the middle and to the umpire every single play, no questions asked. But we can coach that. We can rep that in practice. When we do ROAs, we put a trash can at the 40 yards downfield, and we'll go rapid fire, and every guy has to go return that ball to the middle of the field to that trash can, and then we run it back the other way. It's when we're doing 11 on 11 stuff, good on good, whatever. We have a student assistant or a coach that's out there every single play that ball has to get back to. So that was, the biggest thing was we got to be able to coach it. We can't just say, hurry up, play faster, things like that. I hate stuff like that. To me, that's not coaching. That mom and dad can yell that from the stands. So it's more along the lines of being able to coach our mechanics, and that's how we're going to be able to get things done. So
now, at the same time, how did you make it easier for the quarterbacks? Obviously, you're an offensive. I mean, you played offensive line and defensive line. I mean, your family tree has a lot of defensive and defensive line roots. And then you kind of bounce to running backs, then to quarterbacks. How have you made your system and kind of how you call a game easier for a quarterback? Because I know that's something that you really try to do.
yeah, you're not always blessed with a 4.1 GPA quarterback that's smart and brilliant and can process things really quickly. So that's probably the biggest thing. I know the previous system we had a lot of kind of different things from whether it was a movement key read, and he was keying a safety. Does he drive on the dig or not? And there were a lot of progressional based things for him within the system, and the progression based stuff that the one I can distinctly remember was one of our mesh concepts, and my quarterback was terrible at it. He was really good at the movement stuff, but our old mesh progression had five options to it, and that was kind of a big piece to this system was, well, we are going to be progression based, and we're going to coach every living daylights out of it, and our progressions are our Bible essentially, and there's plenty of teams that have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or your progression is this based on this, and all the different variations to it. Where I try to keep it as simple as possible for those guys, and really I like to keep things to 3. My guys can remember 3 things. Be 1 to 2 to 3. We'll have some, we call them yes nos that are pre-snap that are based on free access or safety alignment, simple built-in stuff there. There's some, quote unquote alerts. Hey, we're 1 high. You want to be alert to a post wheel or and those types of things. And then knowing your hots is critical for us too. But trying to keep, if we can keep those things very, very simple for those guys, I know I'm going to be in good shape and we can get that done. And then I think the other piece of it, some people love teaching, all 82 different coverage variations that you can come up with out there. And I even take that a little bit slower for those guys, or we really focus on the 5 base families. Because at the end of the day, that's what it's going to end up being, whether it's 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4, and then teach them, it's progressional based on it. If we start there, and then we're going to learn the weakness to them of, 0 deep, 1, we're looking away from the safety. So our words away, and 2 holes, 3 seams, 4 flats. And then once we know that like the back of our hand, then we advance to the tags of whether it's buzz, hey, safety's going inside back, or if it's sky, he's going out, like simple stuff like that, but teaching in a segmented form. That the last thing I think is critical is being clear, concise, and consistent with those guys, and not cluttering them with stuff that they don't need to know, and filling their minds with thoughts and things. And, oh, he said this. We're going to keep it right to the book. At some point, yeah, you got to be a football player. I'd rather them do that naturally than make them try and overthink things. So being clear, concise, consistent, and, all your buzzwords and stuff like that. I want to be able to say the same things. I don't like coaching the same things over and over again, because then we're not being coachable. But just those guys hearing, hey, if you're decisive, you're right. I can say that, and it covers a bunch of different things, and they know exactly what I mean when I'm saying that. So those types of things I think are critical in the quarterback room, especially for the guys that I have in here.
Now, I continue with that. How is that how do you approach prep for an opponent and attacking a defense? I mean, obviously, you had a shortened season, your first one, where you kind of, I mean, really, it probably was a good warm up for you for the fall, where you like, okay, this is kind of okay. This is why I learned about how to scout, prep, look at stuff for defense, and then you kind of get to the fall. And despite, I mean, you guys especially had some success towards the end, despite all that COVID. You had COVID issues you guys had to deal with the first half of this season. But you guys, and especially, I mean, you guys finished strong at the end of the year. What have you kind of learned about opponent prep and attacking defenses, and how has that kind of changed over the course of the year and changed now?
I think change is the key word there for me, of finding that the perfect criteria that you want to look at is something that I think we constantly have to evaluate. Are we breaking this down? Are we looking at this and it's essentially worthless? So looking at a lot of that stuff is big for me, and we're going through it right now of what do we want to look at? Is there stuff that we missed that we think would be critical for us to know? Or our back alignment, is our back alignment giving anything away protection wise or run game wise, whatever it is, and looking at some of that stuff just from a weekly prep, kind of my big things. I like seeing the flow of the game. You have this call sheet, but how often I'm using that call sheet, I want it to be pretty natural by the end of the week, that I know exactly what I'm calling, when I'm calling it, and use my call sheet more as a reference rather than Braille, where it has to hold my hand through it. So that's a big thing that we start at, and then you break your games down obviously by we like to go by formation first, and then you go down in all your different categories, D&D and stuff like that. But that's the stuff that by Thursday really is when I want to know, when I want to have kind of everything set. I kind of have a big checklist that I go through with my staff of, hey, what's our plan? If this doesn't go as planned, or what's our adjustment if they come out and do this stuff maybe we've seen in the past, or in my 4 years here, or a coordinator that's been somewhere else, knowing that they like to do something certain, and have a kind of a plan for that type of stuff. So once we get to the game, we're not scrambling around trying to rack our brains to find an answer. That hopefully we have some answers already built in of how we want to adjust at half, or if we can adjust in between series. So that's kind of our prep. And I like going through the game on Friday, usually when I get back from watching a high school football game, and just watch one of their games and have my game plan and my call sheet there, and make sure everything lines up. And kind of my last parting ways with that thing as we get into Saturday. And from a quarterback standpoint, I think the best thing I learned was, and have done, was on Sunday, I have an academic meeting with my quarterback, and I find out what his load is for that week. Does he have a test on Thursday? Does he have a big paper due? Because I got some guys that like to stress when it comes to those types of things. So I'd like to know if they got that on their plate. And then once we have that meeting, I plan out their week as far as when I'm going to load them and when we're going to kind of unload if they do have that big assignment or a big test that they got to prepare for and do well on. And then those guys they have kind of a checklist that they go through, and they have to answer the questions on that thing, from defensive line, who's their guy, who's not their guy, who's the fish up front, what technique are their defensive ends playing, those types of things. There's a big list for D-line and linebackers all the way to DBs. Are they like playing inside leverage, bump and run, soft, whatever it is. There's a bunch of them there. And then really they take their test on Thursday that gets prepared for them, from, hey, what are our favorite third down calls? What what do we like to call on, on the goal line this week? What are our 2-point plays? What's your progression on this? What do you need to be alert for if you get this look, and taking a freeze frame of that picture for those guys, and getting them to even identifying guys of, oh, here's a still shot, put a triangle around the nickel, circle their best linebacker. Who's your read if the play call is this, and build it in kind of that way as we go through, and really it just lets me know that they're prepared and they're ready to roll. And then I also know if they don't have something that we still have 2 days that I can make sure I get that hammered home before Saturday. Certainly don't like scrambling to get that stuff to them, but that has been something that I've added here in the last year that I think has been really beneficial.
Good. Now the other thing we kind of mentioned to talk about is postseason. I mean, obviously, I don't think you had nearly as much time between your first OC season and your second OC season. I mean, we had that.
It's a blur.
Like there is no time. Like you're finishing up. I mean, like and what you were allowed to do recruiting. Like that whole time was just a mess for you guys. Let's just be honest. But I mean, how have you started to approach it? Because obviously your season ended, and you've had a couple months to now kind of look at stuff, evaluate, look at what's good and what isn't. I mean, we talked about a specific play before we came on that you're kind of like, I just don't have the personnel right now. It's like, I love the play, you don't have the personnel. And
right.
Like, so as you're going through, obviously you're looking at your personnel. I think especially like D3 in high school. I mean, it's personnel first. I'm having that conversation with my offense coordinator daily right now. It's like, like all that. So, yeah. But what is your postseason eval process look like?
So really, I like. We'll start by breaking down. I actually got it from Coach Harrell of, hey, this is the concept, attempts, completions, percentage, efficiency percentage, long, short, how many explosives, how many sacks, touchdowns, and chart all that out for each concept. Break it down. Okay, here's our quick games, and we want to be, at least 75%, completion percentage on our quick game, and kind of setting your parameters there for quick game, drop back, movements, play pass, RPO games, stuff like that, screens. So we'll do that first, and you're able to, at the end of the day, in our system, the number one priority for us is completions. You got to go put the ball in play in order to make plays. So that's what I'm looking at. And then, is there any big concerns here? Is there something that, we ran 14 times and we were only 20% completion percentage? Well, we probably need to take a little deep dive into that thing and see what the issue is, whether it's the quarterback wasn't comfortable with it, the concepts not right. We didn't convert routes the way we were supposed to convert them, whatever that case is. But then from there, we're taking those concepts in the quick game and we're breaking it down to quick game by formation, and looking at formationally how we called things and looking at the same stat lines within those. And hey, what formations were explosive in? If we were running our spacing concept, okay, what formations are we running in? What we called out of the most? Where was it the most efficient? Where was it explosive? Where did we get sacked in it? And granted, sacks could be for a variety of reasons, but then be able to go dive in and say, okay, we got sacked 4 times when we ran this concept. Was it offensive line based or was it quarterback based? Of we weren't getting the damn ball out the way that it needs to be. So there's some of being able to go through some of that, and then really I like going in kind of by myself first, and I'm going through every single concept watching it, taking notes of, hey, my guy Ace didn't convert once on a out route that was supposed to be converted on MOR from number one, whatever. And then, hey, when we get back together as a staff before the spring, it's, hey, we have to spend a lot of time teaching conversions, whether it's just to one specific guy or find out, I'd rather question a guy than dig in him of why he didn't convert it. Like, what were you understanding? What were you grasping about this? What made it hard for you? And ask questions rather than jumping down a kid's throat. And let's find out why something's not getting done. But there's, usually I have 2 sheets of notes on, a snag concept that we ran 25 times. Like, I'm looking at every single position from our tailback. Is he getting enough width? Is he getting too much depth? Is our OTB route drifting over the center? Is there a way that we can run that differently? I'm writing questions on that thing too. Of can we teach this thing differently? So when we get together as a staff, and our staff has their notes, and then we can bounce that thing all across each other. And if we don't have answers to some of our questions within our staff, well, we're going to go find them. I'm going to go find a way to get it done, or maybe a different way to coach it, whatever it is, and dabble in that way. I think luckily the spring is a great time for us where you can experiment with some things that, if you want to try a progression a different way, which I don't like jacking with those too much, but a route conversion or whatever it is. That's kind of how I like going through it. The template that I got is pretty solid. If anyone wants that, they can certainly get a hold of me on how that thing's broken down. But it's clean and it's concise, and there's not a bunch of crazy stuff on there. It's to the point. You know what you're looking at. Is it explosive? Is it not? Are you completing the football? Then the last one's your efficiency that I think is critical there.
And the last question I got for you, Coach, and I've asked any offensive or defensive coach this since this offseason, because it's something I think we struggled with, and every level is different.
Yep.
But I did not like it last year for us. And when you take over a job June 1st, there's a lot to do.
No doubt.
I mean, yeah. So my question to you is, for the press box, what do you have your press box people looking for? I mean, is it just down in distance and field position? Some are that specific. Some are like, hey, the backside corner is cheating on. Like, what do you want your press box people looking for during the game?
Yeah, great question. I was kind of in a wild scenario a little bit this year where I'm a press box guy. I think I've only spent one season on the field, and I like being in the box, being able to see full picture, especially taking over quarterbacks. It's and getting thrown onto the field mid-season with some of the stuff we had going on was brutal for me to transition of where now I'm counting. You're always counting on someone else, to be able to get certain things and whatnot, but not being able to have that was tough. But the stuff that we're kind of looking for in the box, usually my GA has a list of 6 to 10 things that we know we need to identify as early as possible, and get that to myself and our offensive line coach based on, usually I take 4 of them. My O-line guy takes 2. Hey, I need to know this. And he gets those answers to us as fast as possible of how they're doing that. And, a team plays, you watch film all week, but a defense is going to play you differently than they played for us, a Muskingum, right? Who's more 11, 12, 13, 21P, where we're a majority 10, 11. So they're going to play us a little bit different. Is that Mike more plussed out of the box? Are they cheating a safety over different than they did last week? Just confirming stuff like that. And then really pre-snap, my guy that's up there with me in the box, I want him communicating with everyone, down, distance, yard line, and then hash is critical. And those are the big things there. He's also the play clock alert guy. Not that we have to mess around with the play clock very often. We should be snapping that thing pretty quick. But if the play clock's getting low, he's in charge of kind of alert me, hey, we're getting to 15 seconds or whatever. And then our offensive line guy is really focusing on the box, really more front stunt blitz. He's kind of tag teaming that with my other guy, with our GA in the box. Receiver guy is taking the field secondary, where I want to know, are we whooping that corner's tail every single play? He's on the field, so he can tell me, hey, they're gassed. This team is gassed. Keep cranking it. Whatever it is, like he's kind of that guy for me. And then I usually take the opposite half of the field from a coverage standpoint and full picture. And then I've kind of been lucky, I shouldn't say lucky, but whether it's whether he's injured or whether he was not traveling that week, but a quarterback for me, I take up there with me. So I have a quarterback that's up there that's really he's writing down every play and tracking that. And then in between series, he fills all of our plays into that we called, and he's listening to us in the box say, hey, cover 4, over front, or an under G, odd, whatever. And if it was a pressure or not, and if we can identify that pressure, he's putting all that into really, we call it the big sheet. That way, because I like to look at, hey, formationally, if we're in 3-by-1 open formationally, I can see a trend in that sheet. And hey, they were three sky, 6 of 7 snaps in the first half out of 3-by-1 open. Well, guess what? I'm getting 3-by-1 sky the rest of the game, or 3 sky to 3-by-1 open the rest of the game. And it also has down and distance on the opposite side, where hey, on P and 10, we're getting they're pressuring us every time on P and 10. And I can go through and see that, they're going three buzz with a fire pressure from the field. Well, every single time to this formation. Well, okay, perfect. Now I have some answers kind of going into the second half for us. So that's I got that from my brother at Bowling Green. They're kind of big sheet. That's been really beneficial for me the last couple of years.
Well, Coach, I think that's a great way to end it. I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, no doubt. Thanks for having me.
Coaches, his Twitter tag will be in the bio. Please make sure you give Coach a follow.
Yeah, for sure.
And send any good athletes their way. Like I said, like I said at the beginning, and this is not to try to be a recruiting plug just for them, but they are doing a very good job of getting out, especially in the Miami Valley area and recruiting. They are doing a fantastic job in what they've started doing lately. If you want to listen back to any part, whether it be tempo, just creating an offensive system, making quarterbacks easy, call sheet, postseason eval, just click the tag will be in the bio, click on it, and you can kind of look over that. The tags might be a little off if this is on one of the podcast apps, but YouTube, they all should be fairly accurate. Like, share, subscribe, check out the affiliates, check out the sponsors, all that lovely jazz. And that's another episode of the Gap Down Backer podcast.